Welcome back to Wild Biz Weekly. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker. Thank you so much for joining me. And by the way, we are here at the Hickson Lead Auditorium at the Harper Center, Creighton University. We have some wonderful people that have put a lot of effort and time into the content, the guests that are coming up here today. It'll be my privilege soon to interview. And so I'd like you to recognize, I'm gonna ask for a little applause in the audience from both the executives in the audience as well as the college students that I call them proudly my associate producers, the Dean's Fellows right here at Creighton University. All you Dean's Fellows in the audience, please stand up right now and let's give you a little round of applause for Creighton's support. Creighton's support, that's right. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, guys. They have done some incredible things. They have a visionary dean over there, Tony Hendrickson. He knows we're reinventing business and journalism right here as we speak. Okay, my second interview. You know, in this age when we've kind of gone through the tumult, the recession, 5 or 6 years of very interesting uncertainty, right? Uncertainty. A company's brand, for that matter, your personal brand, but that's a different topic. But your company's brand is likely unclear compared to where it was insofar as how people perceived it back in, well, we'll say 2007 or 2008. Things have changed because your brand shifts as the backdrop, right, against which you operate also shifts. So today's consumer is uncertain. Corporations are uncertain. I have a branding expert here with me today, a kindred spirit, shall we say. He's from Webster Design. I'd like you to please welcome a good friend, a veteran in the branding industry, Mr. Dick Musel, everybody, right now. Come on, Dick. Come on up here, man. You didn't know when I was going to quit that introduction, huh? Hey, buddy, good to see you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. How's Mr. Webster over there at Webster Design?
Terrific.
Good. You're on what, 50th and 52nd and Dodge? You've been there a long time?
51st and Dodge.
Huh? See, I watch
30 years.
Every time I go by, I salute.
Everybody does. Everybody goes by the building. No one knows what it is, but everybody knows the building.
Well, the fact is that it does attract great attention. It's a beautifully designed building. Now listen, you know, we've talked about the impact of social media on people's perceptions about companies. In fact, we're going to be talking soon to a social media expert here as well on Wild Biz Weekly. Why don't you just define for the group, it's always interesting, how do you, over there with your team, define a brand? I know I've got a definition. I'm curious to see how you define a brand, huh?
Well, it's interesting. People ask us that all the time.
Yeah.
What's my brand? How do I project my brand into the marketplace? And one of the pieces of advice that we give our clients is that the brand is not necessarily what you think it is.
Yeah.
It's what the consumer thinks it is.
And that's sometimes a huge gap, big difference.
Well, there is, and we always counsel our clients that they should be at all times interacting with their clients to gauge really what that perception is.
Yes.
And how that perception changes over a period of time, as you were saying earlier.
Yeah, exactly right. You know, I've heard it described a number of ways. You know, we've gone through phases in branding over the years. One person I remember said, it's the predisposition that you have, the gut reaction that you have to a company or a person or a mark on a package, whatever, where you say to yourself intuitively, so fast, it's like a half a second really, where I like that, I'm attracted to that, or that's not my kind of thing. All right? That's an interesting reaction. Would you agree with that?
I do. Every brand has a story.
Yeah.
And people, whether they're 15, whether they're 85, react usually positively to a good story.
Yes.
So if your brand has a good story, people will react positively to it.
Right.
But you're very right. A person's perception, a personal perception to a brand is visceral.
Yes.
It's usually at a gut level, and it starts at a gut level, and usually migrates to the head after a split second, but it's usually at a gut level.
Yeah, it's interesting, it's emotional. And you know, in the world I live in, I don't know about you, but I'm around people that are not comfortable with emotion. That they're not self-aware in many cases. They're not even sure what they're feeling. So to sit around with somebody who calls himself a branding expert and talk about the feelings that other people have about them makes them very uncomfortable. It's somewhat abstract. It's difficult to place metrics on it. They wonder what the return on investment is if he thinks this versus that, especially in the short term. That's tough, isn't it?
Well, there's always a challenge when it comes to branding in that the natural tendency is to want to quantify it
Right,
And to
right.
be able to report to management if you're in marketing.
Yes.
That our brand is worth X amount of dollars.
Yes,
Or the
yes.
return on the investment, our investment in building the brand is this. And it's
Yes.
very hard to quantify. Now, with social media and with the widening of the marketing sphere,
Yes.
there are.
Because now it's casual conversation and all these multiple and millions
Exactly.
of overlapping
Multiple-
threads.
Multiple ways to be able to quantify who's talking about you, what they're saying.
I don't know if it's nuts and crazy or if it's incredibly clear and logical. I'm not quite sure how to
It's both,
describe
I
it.
think. I think it's both.
I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, I think it's both, because I think there's a wonderful opportunity there to be able to quantify who is talking about
Yes.
you, what they're saying,
Yes.
and what that level of interactivity is about your brand.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's a challenge, because there's a tendency for your brand to be diffused, because, you always want to control your brand and control what people think about you.
Yes.
But obviously, in the world as we know it today, it's very difficult to be able to control what people are saying about
Yeah.
you. And they have so many more voices to say or to voice their opinions.
Yes.
It's very difficult to control that.
Yeah.
So there has to be a balancing act there.
Now, Webster Design has its roots. I've known Dane Webster for a number of years, and it's been for a long time a graphic design firm, and an excellent one, to be sure. But branding has broadened in terms of a sense of what it means as we're talking. Some people say, hey, what it's really about is experiential branding, right? This, one could say, is a brand experience. I'm not going to say if it's good or bad at this point, but we'll say it's a brand experience, right? Another dimension is this whole brand adaptation or adaptive branding, which is fundamentally this. Let's say, for instance, you're Audi, okay? And so you defined your brand as standing for courage. All right. I assume they did a lot of qualitative studies with their clients, and they found out that the people that drive Audis somehow embrace, they have a special feeling about bravery and courage. I believe that's their hook. Now, you monitor social media, you hire all these incredible people that are literally watching tens of thousands of social media dialogues, in this case about Audi, just as an example, and you hear them talking about other things that aren't necessarily on point, right? They're not talking about bravery or courage. Have you failed or succeeded? And do you go back to your brand management team and say, intelligence is kind of like bravery, so let's say that we kind of stand for intelligent bravery. What does everybody think? Now, these are conversations that take place, I swear to God. What do you think about this?
That's an interesting point that you bring up. And Audi is a wonderful success story. They have gone in the last 10 years from being an also-ran to a certain extent.
Definitely a marginal brand, and
in
now
the luxury automobile
right up there with
segment,
BMW, huh?
to being the fastest-growing luxury automobile brand in the world.
Yes.
And they've done it in a number of different ways. What you say about courage is very appropriate, because they have defined certain characteristics that their buyers
Yes.
have.
Right. They
Certain
identify with bravery.
psychographic characteristics.
I think it's heroism, but by the way, I think Audi's customers
I think
they're
innovation,
heroic.
intelligence, heroism,
Yeah,
certain leadership qualities, if you will.
Yeah.
And they have quantified those. They have distilled those down to what they think their average buyer thinks, does, acts, and interacts in the community.
And the story that's going on in their head while they're driving down the road.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
How they view themselves.
But the question is, can you adapt your brand and kind of spread it a little bit and still have a vital living brand? Or do you say, well, they all say that we're functionally good performers, so let's be that. And is that the end? Is that the demise of branding? Or is that a redefinition of
I
your
don't think
brand?
it's the demise of branding. I think it's an adaptation. And of course, you
Okay.
adapt. If people are saying that you are something negatively or positively, you adapt in a number of different ways.
You got to move towards them or embrace them.
You can do it through public relations. You can do it through influencers within the community.
Yes.
You can do it through
Right.
events that you sponsor.
Right.
Audi has done a wonderful job of injecting their automobiles into movies.
Yeah.
If you
Product
see
placement's a great
product
example. Yeah.
placement
Yeah.
and they've done that in such a way that people think of Audis, the automobile, as being a lifestyle choice.
In a certain context. Right?
Exactly.
If they see it against a heroic background or war or military or super slick Manhattan backdrops, that's how Audi is perceived.
Certain types
Right.
of people drive Audis
That's
in
right.
movies,
That's
and
right.
that, of course, has an influence on people in their buyers in life.
Indeed, that's what brand people sit around and talk about all the time. Dick Musel at Webster Design, thank you so much for pontificating with us and reflecting on this subject that's constantly kind of changing. It's a fluid discussion in a fluid society. It's a pleasure to have you, sir. Thank you so much
Pleasure
again.
for me,
Dick
too.
Musel from Webster Design,
Thank you.
everybody. Yes, excellent job. Thank you so much. We'll be right back on Wild Biz Weekly. Don't go away.